Greetings, Internet. This is Lathe26. I'm here to talk to you about the Intellivision Kiosk Multiplexer. We don't know what the device was actually called back in the day. However, today it is informally called the Kiosk Multiplexer. That's because this is a piece of equipment that was part of the store displays, aka kiosks, for the Intellivision gaming console that customers could walk up to and either play from a selection of games or watch a short demo. In this video, I'm going to talk about details of what it is and give demos of the device. Weird behavior will be explored. Even more fun, there will be Easter eggs, secrets, and uncovered bugs discussed towards the end of the video. First off, what do we got? The Kiosk Multiplexer is a large aluminum metal box with 10 slots in the front, a ribbon cable on the side that connects to the Intellivision, and 2 connectors on the other side. There are 3 types of slots in the front. Slot 1 is for a demonstration cartridge or Intellivoice Games. Slot 2 is intended only for Intellivoice Games. And slots 3 through 10 are for normal or Intellivoice Games. We'll come back later about the label saying with or without voice. On the side, there are 2 connectors. One is the customer slot, which also supports Intellivoice Games. The other slot we'll, for now, call the mystery slot. Again, we'll come back to that later. Mattel Electronics offered 2 different kiosks that stores could use to help sell Intellivision consoles and games. The first kiosk mentioned in the 1982 Mattel Electronics catalog was called the Deluxe In-Store Display Module. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? It stood tall on the store floor with signs, slot for flyers, a spot for a TV, and an Intellivision locked onto it. The multiplexer was a hidden away component of this kiosk. Since the multiplexer was directly plugged into the Intellivision, and this was the era before plug-and-play connections, a protective shield covered up the side where the multiplexer plugged into the Intellivision's cartridge slot. For an excellent video on the Intellivision kiosk without the multiplexer, check out the video titled Intellivision Store Display on the channel by Trading Games. There is a link in the description below. The second kiosk mentioned only briefly in the catalog is called the smaller unit. It is a simpler kiosk that sat on a store counter. While the 1982 Mattel Electronics catalog offers no indication whether the kiosk multiplexer was included as part of the smaller unit, the Italian 1983 Intellivision Mattel Electronics catalogs does. In short, it appears that the kiosk multiplexer was not part of the smaller unit. Using Google Translate, here's the translated text for the larger unit on top and the smaller unit on the bottom. Notice that the kiosk multiplexer's part number matches the part number for the larger unit, but not for the smaller unit. Also, only the larger unit's description mentions containing a special demonstration box, which presumably refers to the kiosk multiplexer's device. Nothing similar appears in the description for the smaller unit. A side note, both kiosks had an instruction rule for 10 games, as described in the catalogs. These instructions helped customers understand how to play the game and remove the need to constantly change the game overlays in the controllers. What this also avoided was having a loose pile of overlays and game manuals that might get swiped. Yoink! Enough talk. Let's fire this thing up. As you can see, the original blue demonstration cartridge is in slot 1, a bunch of games are in slots 2 through 10, and Championship Tennis is being inserted into slot 11. Yes, it does go in upside down. By tapping the disc, we can advance through the menu of games of Astro Smash, Night Stalker, Baseball, Football, Space Cadet, which was a prototype game from back in the day that was later released as a homebrew game. Let's see, Kool-Aid Man's title, where are you? Math Fun, Shark, wrong title. Mission X, the Brazilian Shock Vision release, and Championship Tennis. Okay, interesting wraparound. Okay, we can see that some games work with the menu system and others don't. as you might have noticed that the demo cartridge doesn't show up in the list. That's because it isn't selectable. All right, now to show a few quick games. Here's Astro Smash. Here's Space Cadet. And here's Mission X. All right, thank you for watching. Wait, what about the demo cartridge? What about those odd games? What about the other things not covered? Okay, the demo slot is special. You can't select it, but if you leave the system alone for 10 seconds, it will automatically run whatever is in that slot. Here's the original blue demo cartridge running. Give it a few seconds. And to show that any cartridge works, we'll switch over to Astro Smash. Give it a few seconds. But wait, there's more. If slot 1 is empty, there's an attract mode built into the multiplexer. It doesn't do too much, but it does show some text on the screen. When it is done cycling through the text, it resets and goes back to the normal Select a Game menu. Let's see that one more time. While in this mode, the multiplexer does not respond to the user. Back in the day, Sears had their own special model of Intellivisions that they called the Super Video Arcade. These were not just minor cosmetic changes to the case, but also had changes to the Intellivision's ROM. The multiplexer looks for these differences and changes the built-in attract mode. What this means is the kiosk multiplexer was designed for special kiosks specific to Sears. It isn't known what the Sears kiosks looked like, if they were ever even built, or if they were different than the normal Mattel ones. So when this was set up in a store, what prevented a customer from hogging the kiosk for hours? Well, there was a timeout built into the system. Aww, and there's the reset, and it was playing so badly too. However, the timeout does not apply to the demo slot. And as you can see, there is no timeout in the demo slot. Onward to Intellivoice Games! What's interesting here is that whether an Intellivoice game works properly isn't what slot it is plugged into, but rather what other games are plugged into certain slots. If you recall earlier, slots 1, 2, and 11 on the side are labeled as voice only. Let's put Space Spartans in Intellivoice game into slot 2 and have 1 and 11 empty. And it works fine. Let's put another Intellivoice game, B-17 Bomber, into slot 1. And Space Spartan still works fine. Let's put the demo cartridge into slot 1. Mattel Electronics presents what? Let's try a normal, non-Intellivoice game in slot 1. Again, it didn't completely work. Let's do 2 more quick tests. Let's put Space Spartans into one of the normal slots 3 through 10. Let's do slot 3 and have nothing plugged into any of the special slots 1, 2, and 11. It worked. Let's add a normal game into slot 1. And we're back to it not working. So what the heck is going on? I've worked out the schematic for the Kiosk Multiplexer, and here's the reason. The Intellivoice repurposed some cartridge connector pins from the Intellivision connector to the Intellivoice's cartridge connector. These changed pins were intended to expand the voice chip storage of audio samples. The changed pins were then brought out to slots 1, 2, and 11. However, these pins never actually got used, and Intellivoice games ignore these pins. This is why these games work in any slot, because they don't need those pins. However, normal games expect unchanged pins. Thus, normal games in slots 1, 2, and 11 ground out those pins, which block the Intellivoice from fully functioning. One more thing about Intellivoice games. The only game that works fully is Space Spartans. Other Intellivoice games, like Bomb Squad, don't work. However, the reason these Intellivoice games don't work also affects quite a number of other games and will be discussed later. So what about other odd games? What's up with them? First, let's look at some of the Math Fun games. Here you can see Math Fun, Shark, and even a couple demo cartridges moved to the normal slots. Each time the disc is tapped, the color changes, but the name doesn't. However, when we select one of them, we get Shark. What's going on is that most Intellivision games store their own name in them, mainly so that the name can be displayed on the standard Mattel green title screen. This name is read out of the game's cartridge's ROM. However, a few games don't use the standard title screen or use it in a non-standard way, when some of these non-standard games simply store an empty name, no numbers, no letters, no symbols, not even spaces. In the earliest days, Math Fun was the only game that did this, so Mattel added special case code to assume an empty name meant Math Fun. The problem is that more games came along with empty names, which trip up this assumption. Second, what's up with the games with blank names, like Kool-Aid Man and Donkey Kong? That's simple. The name stored in the game is blank. It isn't empty. It's just a bunch of spaces, as if you'd tap the spacebar on your computer's keyboard. Since the name is blank, the display is blank. Third, what's up with B-17 Bomber? Why does it display B-Bomber? From dumping the Kiosk Multiplexer's ROM, it was discovered that it only supports uppercase letters. So to deal with that, if the multiplexer finds a game with lowercase letters, it simply converts them to uppercase. However, when it comes across numbers or symbols, it turns them into spaces. This is why the -17 part of the name is blank. A major limitation of the Kiosk Multiplexer is that it can't play all games. In fact, it has the same major limitation that the Intellivision's cable modem, the Play cable, has. It only supports 8K games. In this case, 8K words translates to a game's max size being 16 kilobytes. Not only that, but these 8K words are limited to an address range of 5,000 through 6FFF. Any game that is too large to fit in that space or puts code outside of that address range will not work. This means that out of the 125 original Intellivision games, only around 80 are compatible. This is why the early games by Mattel and Coleco work, but later games by INTV Corp or games by Activision don't. This is also why Space Spartans is the only Intellivision game that fully works. All other Intellivoice games are simply too large. So the curious among you might ask, what happens with the test cartridges? Well, it depends. Some of the test cartridges just run through their diagnostics and are done. Others run through the diagnostics but then end with a game. The idea being that a little bit of gameplay might reveal flakiness that the tests missed. For example, here's a standard MTE-201 test cartridge that ends with the game Baseball. Here's a special and rare MTE-201 that instead ends with the game Night Stalker. Since the Kiosk Multiplexer blocks access to all the memory of the game cartridge except for address range 5000 through 6FFF, which is where the game code is located, some of you might have already guessed what's going to happen. The test code is blocked, so the standard MTE-201 acts like a normal baseball game, and the special MTE-201 acts like a normal Night Stalker. For the last type of cartridges, the multi-carts, do they work? Simply put, no. The IntelliCart, the Cuddle Cart, and the LTO Flash all do not work. There are a few reasons for this, but a big one is that when the multiplexer scans the slots for cartridges, it applies power to the slot and immediately tries to read it. Since the multi-carts are based on tiny CPUs called microcontrollers that need a little bit of time to boot up, they cannot respond in time. Thus, the multiplexer reads nothing from the slot, immediately cuts power, and moves on to the next slot. I have reverse engineered the Kiosk Multiplexer. Links to the data is provided in the description below. I own a Rev D version of the Kiosk Multiplexer, but have also been given the gracious opportunity to study someone else's Rev B version. Yes, the ROM has been dumped. The basic stats are that it's located at 7000 through 77FF. This makes it 2K words in size, or more accurately, it is 2K decals. This means that the ROM is 10-bit quantities, but is aligned on 16-bit boundaries with the upper 6 bits set to 0. Put in more modern terms, the ROM dump will take up 4 kilobytes of disk space. Interestingly, the last 452 bytes are unused. In case you're wondering, both the Rev B and Rev D boards have identical ROM code. Because the Kiosk Multiplexer puts its code starting at 7000, this means its code conflicts with both the ECS and the keyboard component. These add-ons for the Intellivision are incompatible with the Kiosk Multiplexer. However, there is a possible exception that will be explained later. The ROM dumping process was difficult. The Atari Max Flash programmer was used to dump it. Unfortunately, when it was dumped, most of the data was invalid, with only a handful of valid words. Thus, a single dump was like getting a CIA document with 95% of it blacked out. However, each dump got different words. So, 100 dump files were generated, and I later wrote a program to combine all the valid words together into a single unified dump. After that, a disassembler created the initial version of the assembly file. Manually studying and commenting this code eventually uncovered exactly how it works. In addition, the schematic was worked out. So what was discovered? At the top is a mostly standard Intellivision power supply. Next part to notice are these two metal bars. They are literal power rails. Each side carries either 5 volts or ground. The top third is responsible for decoding addresses and for resetting the system when a user plays a game for too long. The bottom third of the board handles the cartridge slots. It responds only to addresses in the 5000 and 6000 ranges. The middle third of the circuit handles address ranges 5000, 6000, and 7000 and has the mystery connector. This is also where the ROM is located. In the later Rev D boards, the ROM is stored in this single chip. However, in the Rev B boards, there is ROM code stored in these two EEPROM chips that are missing in the Rev D board. As for the mystery connector, what does it do? Even though it has 44 pins, it's not a reversed Intellivision game cartridge connector, and it's not a keyboard components add-on slot. Instead, it's a unique expansion connector for boxes that added more cartridge slots, possibly as many as 48 slots. It's unknown whether these add-ons ever existed, but theoretically, this allowed for more games. What was discovered from studying the ROM? We've already discussed that only uppercase letters are supported, and everything else is either displayed as blanks or are converted to uppercase. Also discussed was if a game has an empty name, it is assumed to be math fun. However, what's interesting is that 2 Easter eggs were found. If you're at the Select a Game menu, and you type in 8, 1, 6, 5, 7, and enter, it displays John was here. If you type in the wrong code, you can press clear to start over. Similarly, if you type 2, 1, 0, 5, 9, and enter, you get John Loves Lucy. This may be a coincidence, but both of the codes of 8:16:57 and 2:10:59 sound like dates to me. Additionally, there are 2 snippets of dead code left in the ROM. This code is unreachable. The first snippet appears to be code that selects a cartridge slot at random. However, it does not look 100% complete, like it was mostly written and then abandoned. The second snippet is a little more interesting. It is a sound effect. This sound effect was extracted and leads us into... To learn a little more, a program called Sphinx of Quartz Judge My Black Vow was created. One of its goals was to show all 26 letter of the Kiosk Multiplexer's unique screen font. Hence the name, Sphinx of Quartz Judge My Black Vow, since that phrase uses all English letters. The other goal was to be able to play the dead code sound effect for the first time. Unfortunately, I don't have a way of running this code through the actual kiosk multiplexer, so the LTO flash is plugged directly into the Intellivision. So here is the program merged with the multiplexer's ROM code. You can see all 26 letters of the alphabet on the screen. For those of you wondering why the more common phrase of Sphinx of Black Quartz, judge my vow, wasn't used, well, that version line wraps to 5 lines that goes off the bottom of the screen. Here's the title screen. And here we are in the main program, complete with a quartz sphinx and someone pledging a black vow. If you press 1, you can hear the normal game selection sound effect. If you press 2, you can hear a sound effect that hasn't been heard in decades. Ready? Let's hear that again. Wow, that was so underwhelming. So here's my theory on this sound effect. I think it was intended as the sound made as users clicked the disc to advance through games. However, the problem is that kids and some adults might find the sound too tempting to not play around with. Imagine being the store clerk who has to listen to all day long. Last side note, as the developer who had to write the code for all those sparkles to appear on the Sphinx, I've never written the word sparkle so much in my whole life. There are a number of differences between the Rev B and Rev D boards. However, only a couple will be discussed. One difference is the labels. Compared to the later Rev D boards, the label in the Rev B is upside down and printed in black. Also, the slots are labeled in a different order compared to the Rev D, even though the circuitry itself is functionally identical between the D and the B. In a nutshell, the Rev B label does not appear to match what the Rev B slots actually do. On the Rev B, slot 1 is labeled as the voice demo only, which is similar to before. However, slot 10 is labeled special as voice or regular, with the remaining slots as regular only. This is different from the Rev D's slot 2 being special as voice only, and the remainder being as regular or voice. One other difference seen between the Rev B and the Rev D boards is the later Rev D boards have some circuit board substrate glued to the side of the cartridge slot connectors. This makes it hard to insert cartridges in backwards. On the older Rev B boards, this piece is physically missing, which makes it easier to insert the cartridge incorrectly. On the bottom, there are 4 empty screw holes. Presumably, these are where mounting screws attach the kiosk multiplexer to the kiosk itself. However, it isn't known where on the kiosk it went. My best guess is that it mounted upside down underneath where the Intellivision went, but this is only a guess. This hole is not threaded and its purpose is unknown. It does not line up with any opening on the circuit board just above it. One interesting tidbit is the keyboard components cartridge connector uses the same plastics as the kiosk multiplexer's cartridge connector. There is an old video demonstrating the kiosk multiplexer. This video is called Mattel Intellivision Kiosk Demonstration. A link is provided in the description below. This video appears to be a video transfer from a VHS tape. One item to notice is even though it is seen to plug into a Sears Intellivision, the game title screens show that the board inside the Intellivision is from a Mattel Intellivision. This is why the simple attract mode displays the Mattel text instead of the Sears text. There are 5 kiosk multiplexers currently known to exist. Here is the list. The Papa Intellivision website, linked below, has a wealth of internal documentation from Mattel Electronics regarding the Intellivision. In a few documents, there are references to POP hardware, which talks about the kiosks. POP is suspected to stand for point of purchase. Interestingly, the documents talk about a pre-1982 version of the hardware and a post-1982 version of the hardware. The only difference discussed is that the ROM code is moved from 7000 through 77FF to 4800 4FFF, possibly to improve compatibility with the ECS add-on. No post-1982 kiosk multiplexers have been found. From looking at my RevD's chips with serial number 4424, some of the chips have a manufacture date as late as the 37th week of 1982, which works out to be around September 16th, 1982. If post-1982 kiosk multiplexers were ever made, they were made after that date. Finally, last but not least, bugs. First, if you plug a kiosk multiplexer into Intellivision 2, which has a different ROM compared to both the original Mattel and Sears Intellivisions, the kiosk multiplexer's built-in attract mode incorrectly identifies the Intellivision 2 as a Sears. Next, the display code was never designed to handle more than 4 lines of game title text. If the name line wraps to 5 or more lines, the code crashes. Next, the game code wasn't designed to handle single words with more than 10 letters. This is why the first and last letters of championship overlap weirdly. Lastly, the multiplexer relies on a random number generator at boot up. However, if the first random number is 0, then the code gets caught in an infinite loop. Thus, when the multiplexer's ROM is run in the JZINTV emulator, you have to add the randmem option at the command line, or you have to hack the multiplexer ROM code to treat 0 as an acceptable random number. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far, you're almost as weird as I am. I salute you. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.